How many days do we have left until we reach the next all-time high and the peak of this current bull run? What can we expect to be different this cycle? Is Jerome Powell actually considering resigning? We're gonna talk about this and much more today. Welcome to Bitcoin Predator, hit the like button and let's get started. So after the breakout from last week, we are seeing right now Bitcoin price consolidating for a couple of days, and I expect another breakout over the next few days or weeks. We are repeating the exact pattern that we have seen the last times that Bitcoin consolidated and then broke out tremendously. On the daily time frame, we can see a fair value gap identified right here in this region and an order block right here. But whenever I saw Bitcoin price behaving like a consolidation breakout over and over again, I see many times the price performing a liquidity sweep, an aggressive liquidity grab, and continuing its way up. So in the 4-hour time frame, I can quickly identify a supply zone, which will be considered a point of interest if you want to wait for a breakout and get your next trade going. Because based on past behavior, I think it is quite unlikely that the Bitcoin price will get as further down as this region right here, or maybe this one, before continuing its way up. Because we have to remember, guys, we are at the third year of the bull run and almost near the next all-time high, the next peak of this cycle. And I always like to identify Bitcoin past behaviors from the previous cycles in order to have a good idea of what's gonna happen next. Usually I consider the first area a retail dominated area, so smart money and big institutions were not on Bitcoin at this time as a whole. But when you take a look at the second area and third area, we started to see a similar price behavior, especially near the price peak or at the end of the cycles. When we consider the halving date from the previous cycles, then we have an idea that around the 500-ish day we reached the all-time high and the bear market started. So I analyzed the previous charts of those cycles and I tried to be as granular as possible so we can have a clear window of when that peak is coming. And when you analyze right here around the 528, 527 day, 525, maybe around that time, that's when we actually hit the peak. So when you take into account the third halving, which took place on April 20th, 2024, this is what we have as an expectation of when the next peak is coming. Since usually we have a 500-day window after the halving, the possible peak will likely be around September 2025. And when you take into account the 526 days after the previous halvings, then we have a really interesting window, which will be around the end of September. So that's when I consider this to be a quite interesting window, so we can consider the peak and what I personally call the danger zone. This is when I actually will closely look at the price behavior and close my trade and get ready for the bear market. Now, you may be wondering, well, can we go further and actually start the bear market at the beginning of the 2026 year? Yes, we can. It is possible. However, this is the financial markets and nothing is 100% sure. It would be great to see that the price will continue to go parabolic until the beginning of 2026. However, we must be ready for whatever scenario comes up on Bitcoin. So my plan is to closely watch how the price is going to behave right here, and when it gets to this window, I will start to adjust my stop loss and get ready to take the trade if I see a big reversal in the indicators. Because my biggest bias right now is the M2 Global Liquidity Index. Even though we had a little bit of an offset around this region right here, we still continue to correlate strongly with the M2 Global Liquidity. And as we can see, we still have a lot of room to go up. And as a coincidence right here in the chart, we can see the peak of the global liquidity right here in this region, exactly where I put the window of the danger zone for the next Bitcoin peak price. Which again, happy days if it's just a pullback and then we continue to go up with the global liquidity. Nevertheless, this is something that we have to keep our eye on over the next few months. And when it comes to possible pullbacks to get into this bull run, I'm still strongly believe on the 60-day cycle theory. We had the previous cycle low around this region right here. I'm still expecting the next cycle high after July, after the end of July, before we get to the new all-time high, and then a short pullback to the downside right here around August. My indicator for on-chain analysis of the Predator oscillator is still in the middle of the oscillation. The momentum line just hit a new low and possibly will continue to go up along with the price. And because of that, I expect the price to reach this level right here on the upper threshold and then the beginning of the bear market. And when we look at the previous performance of Bitcoin, I see many traders making the mistake of looking at only the month performance itself. And although we have mostly July month as a bullish, we have to consider at which stage of the bull cycle we are in. And then based on that, you can make your conclusions about how it's going to be this month in this particular cycle. For example, if you take a look at the third year of the bull run from the previous cycle, then we're gonna look at the July and August of 2021. And here we are at the 2021 in the months of July and August. So again, we cannot only look at the monthly performance of whatever stage of the cycle we are in. We have to consider if we are on the third, the second, or the first year of the bull run, or in the bear run. And then you can take a look at how the months of the previous runs were in those cycles. And we can expect some massive gains in July and August. Right now, we are already at the 9% gain, and we are still in the mid of July. Can we get as much as 18% in this month or 13% on August? Yes, we can. However, price discovery has been a little bit gentle this time. And of course, we want to expect price spikes as much as we want. However, we must be ready for build price discovery. Nevertheless, I still expect July and August to be bullish months in 2025 for Bitcoin based on previous cycles. And I still strongly believe that because we have seen a massive inflows for ETFs in Bitcoin, which again is institutional playing on the price. In addition to that, we have seen exchange reserves going down and down as days goes by. And we never see a crash of money inflow and exchange reserves going down. There will be a supply shock coming in. This happens whenever you see a huge spike in the price like right here. It means that the demand for Bitcoin is much higher than the supply. So I still expect that to happen over the next few months. We have a little bit of liquidity forming below the price at around 115K, and then a huge amount of liquidity forming at 120. Some traders still believe that there is a 2 tops, 3rd tops, 4 tops, and then the bear market starts. I think it is way too soon to be that. And yes, I think we are still going to break out the 120K and continue for new all-time high in price discovery. So possible zones of entry will be around here, and then when price breaks out, that will be when I will place my trade. When we talk about the DXY, after many days of going down, we had a couple of days going up and a pullback, a retest of the dollar. We have seen the PPI and the CPI indicating that we still have some inflation going on in the market. But we were already expecting that from the trueflation. However, we have to take a look at the bigger picture. I think we are getting a similar behavior to this one. Maybe this is just a spike before continuing its way up. And overall, we are trending down. So we can expect not much gains for the Bitcoin price over the next few days. If you take a look at the previous cycles and the peaks of the MVRVZ score, it has been going down since then. So in confluence with my danger zone window, we have until the 4th level of the score to be considered the next peak. Retail interest is still pretty low. We are still on the balance level of the FOMO data for the Bitcoin price. We haven't even reached the grid or the FOMO level. So there is still a lot of room for price discovery. And although we have seen a couple of good news as the banks are adopting more and more Bitcoin for backing up loans and so forth, offering to retail customers, and also as price goes up, we are still continuing to get more and more market cap. Unfortunately, we have still talked about this kind of deal right here. I'm not attacking this channel particularly, this is actually a really good channel, but I have seen this kind of news circulating on the internet many times. Just like we saw with the fake release of Powell considering resignation right here from previous weeks. The devil lies in the details, like the economy will boom. It doesn't exist. Nobody from the Fed talks like this. And in the same way, this kind of information is never credible because we all know that Trump cannot fire Powell. And we have seen since then that Jerome is not in their interest to resign. He will just continue to do his job until the end of his mandate. From the politics perspective, we have seen that we are on the crypto week, but it has been quite a joke when you look at the previous news that they started to vote regarding crypto legislations one day and it failed. On the second day, it also failed. So I think this is just narratives that those big institutions use in order to get price to the premium and discount prices and buy and sell more. Now, some interesting news that we have seen is regarding the Bitcoin reserve. If the US government does not hold as much Bitcoin as they expect, they're gonna have to buy it eventually. And as we have seen previously, the exchange reserve for Bitcoin is going further down. And I'm a big believer that over-the-counter is also going down. So again, this is pretty much demand for Bitcoin coming from the US government that's going to increase and eventually supply shock again.